Hello and welcome to the Eclipse Evolution podcast. I'm your host, Savannah Rose Johnson. I have missed you all so much. I appreciate your patience as I've been on this hiatus for the past few months. I will fill you in on why I took that break. I've been thinking about this episode. It's been on my heart for some time. I've been thinking about you all, my amazing audience and listeners. And it's going to be a journey, this episode today. But just buckle up and just know how much I am feeling your love and have been feeling your love and appreciate the space that you hold for me. And I just really cherish the feedback that I receive on how me just sharing about my life in these episodes, these ramblings, it feels like how it touches your life and that you can relate to it. And that's all I want. Like, I really just love being able to connect with you all over the world. Shout out to my really just special groups of followers. It feels like that I'm reaching in Iceland. Love that. Like, that's so cool to me. So shout out to all my Iceland listeners, my Sweden listeners, my listeners in India. It's interesting how I've just been developing these little pockets of folks for some reason in these other nations that are connecting to my message, and it means so much to me. So just know I see you, I appreciate you, and I appreciate every single person that tunes in. So I'm very grateful for that. And also I'm super grateful and this episode is brought to you by Black Aswad Coffee, if you can see. Yes. This company, they have been so gracious to me on this journey. I don't drink a lot of coffee, but I just really appreciate their mission and their desire to collaborate. And this coffee is so good. I'm kind of a coffee snob because I used to be a barista. So their coffee really delivers what it needs to. But as you can see here, this bag, the artwork is about STEM and school systems and supporting STEM specifically. And so what I love about Black Aswad Coffee is how each of their different types of coffee or bags of coffee have a certain kind of theme, whether it's first responders or teachers or nurses or education like this one. They give back to the community and these kinds of folks. That's part of their mission. Not only is coffee, but it's also supporting folks in our community. So given that I'm the vice president of an educational nonprofit, Ken Rod Incorporated, this particular bag of coffee and how it supports STEM and STEM education just really spoke to my heart. So thank you for just collaborating with me and for the work that you do, not only providing that delicious coffee, but for giving back to our community as well. So, but with that, we can move forward in our topic of the day, which is the ending of my engagement to my now ex-fiance. Yeah, it's really interesting how things happen because I think I mentioned the engagement maybe once or twice in some of my past episodes. Actually, the last podcast episode that I recorded with my friend Marcus was the day that I actually ended that relationship. And so this hiatus has been one that was longer than I was expecting. Because honestly, I just haven't felt like safe enough to share my experience in this breakup. Not necessarily like fearing physical safety like in all regards, but it has been so much to process, and I don't really know what I was expecting in my breakup, but what I got was it wasn't that. I was not expecting that. It was a very, in my eyes, like tumultuous breakup, and has delivered a lot of hard truths and clarity, yet confirmation. Confirmation that I made the right choice, but it's also been a really, really, really hard pill to swallow when it comes down to some of the truths that have been revealed. Just as far as the entirety of our relationship is concerned. And just to be clear, the intentions of this episode are not to bash on my ex. That's not what I want to do at all. That's not my intention. I personally don't want to carry any of that negativity or just malintent in my heart at all. And I've been trying to be very conscious about that, even when speaking with people. And another reason why I've had to take so long to film / record this episode was because I wanted to make sure I was in a place personally where I felt safe, but also I knew I could be more conscious in this space and still lead from a heart-centered place. Not so much for his sake. Yes, but really just for my own sake, because integrity is something that's very important to me. And this being a platform that I just want to choose to be beneficial for other people as well and listening. I more so want this to be about me exercising my autonomy, exercising my liberation, my voice, really calling in and advocating for my truth in this experience. And so it's going to be a little bit less about my ex and more just about my experience. So I just wanted to be clear about that from the get-go. Of course, I'll still mention things that happened, but it's going to be from my point of view. And I still want to leave space for just love and compassion, because even though there were some things that weren't okay or that were painful that I experienced when it came down to my ex and his behavior, I know even if I don't fully understand it or will ever understand it, I know it comes from a place of his own wounds, and that's something that I'm just trying to still hold compassion for. That being said, what kind of led me to ending our engagement and breaking up was just a very consistent pattern of just imbalance, and not feeling like the foundation of our relationship was strong enough to proceed forward with something like marriage. And I can walk away from this relationship knowing that I really gave my all, and it's really challenged some beliefs of mine, especially when it comes down to what unconditional love is, because I've faced some criticism about received feedback from him of I wasn't loving him unconditionally, or something like that, just because I was asking for fair treatment in my eyes. And so that's been something that has been challenging for me, because yes, I do believe in unconditional love, love that is without conditions, but at the same time, I also don't believe that that's an excuse for not having standards and for not for expecting fair treatment and reciprocation. And I also don't believe that unconditional love is something that needs to be given if you're being exploited. I think unconditional love is a two-way street. And I do feel like I gave a lot of love without conditions, and gave freely and forgave and was willing to work through a lot, because I was under the impression that there was honesty and loyalty in thought, word, and deed. And when that was revealed to not be true, I had to take my love away, because to me it's a form of abuse when you're being led to believe one thing, and that's on which the condition I'm giving, like my love, is like I'm giving all of my time, energy, money, affection, emotion, sharing a space, like, being in a relationship and moving forward and feeling like it's safe to give all of that, because not because I'm expecting anything in return, but because I'm believing and was led to believe that I could trust that person, and that and when it just came to light that there were so many lies and there's a lot of deception and gaslighting and manipulation, it's like everything fell apart. And I just and left just in this place of feeling really broken, and just feeling very deceived and exploited, because I feel like I had such an open heart and was so vulnerable in this relationship and so open and communicative, and to be met with that, just the shadow, I don't know how else to call it, but just all the shadow and the darkness that was there, that I was either choosing not to see or was told it wasn't there or whatever it was, really squaring up with that. It just has been really freaking confusing, and has just left me to wonder, like, was any of it real? And I know parts of it were real. I do believe deep down that he has or had love for me and was trying his best. But I think that there was just some stuff that, like, he wasn't confronting or was not dealing with or moving through or expressing or whatever it is, that led to a lot of just other symptoms of imbalance in our relationship that I was picking up on intuitively. And when I would bring that anxiety or whatever it was to him to try to talk about, to confront it and work through it, just being met with denial or reassurance, like false reassurance or whatever it was, just added on another layer and another layer and another layer of deception, that I think, I mean, kind of like that expression goes, when you build a house on sand, it can only stand up for so long. And that was what happened. Things just got to this point where there's just enough of a pattern occurring that I couldn't deny it anymore. And I had to just really listen and honor myself and love myself enough to move through the fear, to move through the what ifs, to move through the I kind of hate to use this phrase, but like the brainwashing, for lack of better words, that I feel like I've been kind of conditioned to believing throughout the entirety of our relationship, where it just came to this point of bottom line actions and words where they just were not aligning. And I personally cannot build trust or sustain trust if that's the case. Like I need actions and words to align, because words are just words. And if our actions are showing something else, I mean, that's what impacts us. Like words can only go so far. Actions are all we have at the end of the day. And there were certain things that I was willing to work through because I thought that there was trust there. I was trying really hard to believe that there was trust there, but there just was not enough action to support it. And then when that kind of like curtain falling or shelf breaking or whatever you want to call it occurred, that was when I just knew I was at my limit. And that was very, very early August of this year. And I tried to give it one more shot by, calling upon couples counseling, external help, and which was really, I'm grateful for that resource because it really helped me like see that I'm not crazy. And I think I had been telling myself this / it had been reinforced that like, oh, I'm just like delusional about these things, or I'm just like too much anxiety about this or that, or this like I'm holding on to grudges or whatever it was, and just believing that. But part of kind of the curtain falling moment was seeing that like, no, there were just secrets happening. And there's a difference between like having privacy and having secrets. And trust is kind of the differentiator behind that, where you can have your privacy. Everyone has a right to that, but also still trusting that that privacy isn't going to be abused and stuff withheld, knowing that it would hurt the other person or it'd go against the other person's boundaries, or it would be a violation of trust. That's when it becomes a secret, and that's when it becomes a deception. And there's a difference between that and just plain old privacy. And I was just really battling with that for some time, thinking like, oh, am I just being controlling? Am I just being insecure? And I got to this really dark place in our relationship where there was so much inconsistency with just my boundaries being violated. I guess consistency with my boundaries being violated, but inconsistency with actions, showing that was going to actually be reprimanded. That, I don't know, it just led me to this place of shame, where shame became my safe space, which I know doesn't make any sense logically, but when things were so inconsistent in the relationship and so confusing, and so my intuition was telling me one thing, but my now ex-partner was telling me the other, it just led me to this deep, dark place of just distrust in myself and not feeling like I was good enough, or feeling like I was the problem, because it was so confusing, and the narratives surrounding me were so full of either blame or lack of accountability, or just avoidance or denial, or whatever you want to call it, that the one way I could try to take back control over the situation was just making myself the problem. And I'm like, well, maybe if I looked like this, then he wouldn't, this, or maybe if I did this better or worked harder, or maybe if I like took better care, like it just all turned into like, what do I need to do to not be hurt anymore by this person? And that is codependency. As y'all know, I've talked about this before, but that was like codependency showing up, and like shame being a really big part of it, where it just didn't make any sense to me what was happening. And just with the codependent cycle being so vicious, where the highs were so great in the relationship, like he really does and did have a lot of wonderful redeeming qualities. I mean, that's why I fell in love with him. And when things were good, they were so good. and I felt so safe. And I really, really miss that, and miss that version of him. And I think it just I think he was really trying to be that person consistently, and I was really believing that he could be that person consistently, and I think in some ways he can, but it was just when the highs, wore off, or, something would happen that would just take me right back to like the lows. I was hoping that that wouldn't be the reality. It's like I was just always trying to work to get back to that high, thinking that that could be the normal. But I just don't know if we ever achieve balance for very long. Like, it'd be long enough stints for me to feel like we could progress, like getting engaged, or like we were talking about maybe moving at some point, and I was like okay with it at that moment in time. But then when just the lack of consistency was there, and just there's so much imbalance as far as like energy was going towards the relationship, like I felt like I was having to do a lot of the emotional labor, a lot of the physical labor, a lot of just all kinds of things on top of like some of the financial aspect. It just didn't match up. And that's when I just felt this deep building, like just tsunami of anxiety, where I just could not move forward in that step, and I could not move forward in getting married. Yeah. So the highs when they were here, they were really great, and I really do miss that. But there's a difference between loving someone and loving the potential that they have, and that's something I had to square up with, where I feel like I saw so much potential and really saw the best in my ex-partner, and knew that he could be this amazing husband, and really did believe that, and was willing to look past, a lot of things, like just stuff from his past or stuff that he was working through, because as long as he was working on it, I was fine. Like, because I'm not expecting anyone to be perfect. I certainly am not perfect. Like, I worked through a lot of stuff in that relationship, and I'm proud of that. But it just kind of got to this place where I felt like I was the only one doing the work, and it just created this tension of me moving forward and me wanting to really get to the root of the problem. And it felt like he just wanted to have external things fix the relationship. Like, let's just move to this new environment. Let's just get married and then everything will be fine. And I'm like, no, no, you take your problems wherever you go. And marriage certainly does not fix anything. If anything, it intensifies stuff. So at least that's what I believe. So we were just kind of having this friction where I really wanted to get to the bottom of things, but couldn't, because I got like hair on my face, but couldn't because I wasn't aware of all the information, and that was an intentional, and I think somewhat unintentional thing on his part. So yeah, that's been hard. So the relationship was one thing, but it was the breakup that I think was almost equally, if not more damaging than the relationship itself. I think if we had just broken up and it had been amicable and peaceful, it would have been a very different experience. But the breakup itself was, I feel like I'm still healing from it. I feel like I'm still processing it. It was just very volatile, and I had to spend a lot of time away from home, with family and friends, which I'm really grateful for. I feel like, oh my gosh, if I didn't have my community during this, I would be in such a pickle, because And I feel like that's part of the divine timing of all of this, was the fact that, like, I don't think I could have gone through this process if I hadn't aligned these other things in my life. Because we had almost broken up a year ago over very the similar, if not the exact same problems that ended up in ending our relationship. But I think I was just in a place where I wasn't secure in myself enough. I wasn't in my codependent recovery yet. I didn't have a close group of friends, like female friends, and all those factors that are important. So I think once I really strengthen things with my family, strengthen things with my friends, strengthen ultimately the relationship with myself and my higher power, that's what really helped me square up with my sense of self-worth, and knowing that I don't have to work so hard for love, and I don't have to be in so much pain, and that I deserve to receive what I give, because I give a lot, and I love that about myself. I don't want to change that, but it's also like, it's not sustainable or healthy for anyone if I enable someone not giving back to me. And that is where I have ownership in things in this relationship. Like, I really did enable certain things. I really did. I was terrible at enforcing my boundaries, because I just wasn't able to tolerate the pain that came with that, or like the fear that came with that, or whatever it was, or felt like I was worth more. So I totally own that. And I'm grateful for the security I have in myself, and not having that fear anymore. If I need to set a boundary and enforce that boundary, I can do that. And if someone does reject me, or if someone does pull away or whatever because I set that boundary, then like, that really says more about them than it does about me. So, but it's taken me a while to learn that and really practice that and honor it. But anyways, yeah, so our breakup, I think if it had gone the way I was hoping for or expecting, so I think I was still giving him the benefit of the doubt, it would have been one thing, but our breakup was so, I mean, it was horrendous. I know that's a strong word, but like, that's how I would describe it. I'm still recovering from it. I'm still pretty messed up from how he acted during that breakup. And so we broke up the last day of August, and he didn't move out of the house that we have shared until the weekend of October 14th. So he's been out of the house now for a month, give or take. And that's how long it's taken me just to have that physical space from him to be able to speak on this, because of all of the fear and of all of the exhaustion and sadness. Yeah, that's just the honest truth. Yeah, because I mean, the breakup, having to like share a space with someone that you've broken up with, oh my gosh, like, that is not for the faint of heart. And especially someone who, is firm in living in their truth, and who maybe isn't taking care of themselves, and who is maybe not in the most balanced state. It was awful. And it was just living on like pins and needles, just walking on eggshells, like all of that. Like, one day would be, he was angry at me. The next day he'd be in shambles, crying, begging for me back. The next day he'd be completely indifferent. The next day he'd be working on himself and the happiest person. And the next day he'd be angry again and just really malicious. It was just, And that's, I say day by day, it could really be hour by hour. It would just switch up that fast to where like I could not catch my breath. I could not, I was just so activated and hypervigilant to his whims, and was just doing everything I could to just get through the day. And that was hard. And I mean, I would go out and be with friends, and I'm really grateful for that, because it would just give me this break, this reprieve, and I could just remember that there's so much joy in my life and so much to be grateful for, and that I deserve to receive that, even though things were so hard. Like, arguably probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through. I'm so proud of myself for still inviting in that joy and inviting in people who felt safe and that I could be vulnerable with, because I was just absolutely in survival mode. And it's been really hard to accept that someone that used to be my safe space, and like someone that like used to have my whole heart, and that was going to be my husband. Oh, it's hard just saying that. Oh, shoot. Like, the person that I feel like I was most vulnerable with in my whole life, and so close, and just so open. That's the person that's like hurt me the most in this world. And I haven't been able to understand. And like, I know logically it doesn't really have anything to do with me. Like, I have all these great people telling me, oh, it's him, whatever. But I'm like, I wish that helped. Because part of me, like, that shame that I've been carrying, like, is still like, goes to that place, and is like, maybe in some ways I deserve this. Maybe I didn't do a good enough job. Or maybe, like, I don't know, like, I just wish it made sense. And, you know, like, I don't know if it ever will. And that's kind of where I have to just have some acceptance. But I think part of what has led me to finally being able to speak on this is just like the people in my life that, like the new people that are in similar situations, and who I can really relate to. And then also like people that have known both of us, and who are able to give me that validation. That's been so powerful. And it's opened up a lot of this grief in an interesting way, but I'm so grateful for those people. And yeah, I don't really know where I was going with that, but yeah, so I don't hurt as much as like I thought I would with the breakup itself, just because I was under so much stress that I was just trying to override, and I was under just so much anxiety and pressure, and just absolutely exhausted emotionally, that like when it actually came down to us breaking up, like I've just felt a lot of relief, and like that my energy isn't going towards like a black hole, but like I can just give to myself and take care of myself. And I'm so grateful for that. And yeah, because I just feel like I was being drained dry, especially with just not receiving what I needed. And I think what I've been grieving more is like grieving what I thought our relationship was, because we did have a pretty powerful conversation at one point when things were like in a moment of balance during the breakup, where he did confess to a lot of things and did actually take some accountability and ownership. It wasn't enough to change anything, because like I'm just when I'm done, I'm done. I can't. Um and a lot of the confessions that I was given just reinforced um a lot of the validity of the anxiety I'd been having, and um confirmed like what my intuition had been telling me. And I don't know if I were to go back, I wouldn't be going back to what I thought, because I was proceeding through our relationship thinking it was one thing when really it was something completely different. So I feel like I've been grieving something that was real for me, because I didn't have all the information about what was going on with him and what his actions were. And so it's like none of it was real. And I feel so far away from it now, even though it hasn't been that long. It just feels like it was like a movie, or like it just happened to someone else. And I think that might be some of my own just like dissociative like survival tendencies, where I'm just like, what? Because even like looking at pictures, I'm like, I don't know who that person is. Like, it was that person in the pictures, like it was someone that I thought it was. And then kind of like when the true colors come out, I'm like, that's who is really under that mask. Kind of like Scooby-Doo, where it's just like you pull out the mask and it's like this totally different thing. It's like that's kind of how it felt, where I'm operating under this guise of this is who I'm with, when really there's so much under the surface that was that I could feel was there, but couldn't quite put my finger on it, or would get talked out of, or whatever. Because like I remember like having specific fears and bringing them to him and being like, hey, I know this is kind of a crazy fear, but like I'm feeling this way or that way, or like I'm worried that you might this or that. And being met with that reassurance of like, oh no, I would never, or no, you have nothing to worry about, or even just straight up like sometimes shame of like, why are you anxious about this? Like, why don't you trust me? That kind of stuff. And that's kind of where that shame would, like why I would just feel bad for feeling how I felt. I would feel bad for feeling how I felt. And then for all that stuff to come up and like be true, like what I was worried about was like it was actually happening. It really messed me up. Yeah. And I feel like I'm in this place right now where it's like I'm not grieving the relationship anymore, because we had two different relationships. He had one version of the relationship. I had a different version. And I'm really not grieving it as much as I thought. I'm grieving like pieces, like weird little pieces, like the good times, like the stuff that I believed to be real and that was really meaningful for me. Like just missing. I mean, a year ago, he was taking me home to meet like his family for Thanksgiving, and like having Thanksgiving with his family, and like just seeing where he grew up and being in his childhood home and meeting his friends and all that really deep, meaningful stuff. Like that was all real for me. And just the grief of like, and I think even some grief of like thinking like if like when we were to have children, like, oh, this would be their grandparents' home. Like this is where I would take my children to spend holidays and stuff. And so having to say goodbye to all of that has been really hard. And just like those connections with his family too, because like I consider them my family. Like I've formed my own relationships with them. And that's been so hard to let go of, because I was all in. I was all in, and it just hurts that he wasn't. Yeah. Um, but I guess, kind of mutual friend that we have, like, receiving feedback from them, um, like, has been so helpful because because also just with the reality that my ex is living in and what he's communicating to his friends and family about, um, how things ended, and just that whole process. Like, there have been, I from what I know, like, stuff communicated to these people that, like, I love, um, that's not true, or that's just based off of assumption, or is protective of himself, or whatever. I mean, that's like that is what it is. And so that's been really hard for me to accept and just kind of let go of, where it's like these people that I love believing stuff that's, like, not true, or having ill feelings towards me. And that's my codependent stuff showing up a little bit there, where it's like, um, trying to control how people perceive me. But it's not so much that I want them just to see me in a good light, but it's like I just want them to know the truth. But it is what it is. But in speaking with our mutual friend, that was so affirming for me, because it reminded me that, like, people form their own conclusions, people have their own opinions, and just because maybe they're hearing something doesn't mean that they will always take that on or side with that person just because they have a longer history. And I really do feel, and I'm just trying to trust in the fact that I did form my own relationships with some of his friends and family, and I really did allow them to know me, and was vulnerable with them. So just hoping that, like, um that they hold on to that experience of me, just because, like, I don't carry any ill feelings towards anyone, and it would just, I don't know, it just makes me sad to think that they might have those, negative feelings towards me. But that's outside of my control. Um, it is what it is. But yeah, so yeah, that's that. Yeah, so the breakup was really hard, just having to share this space with someone who is grieving and going through their own stages of grief, while I was just in a different place with my grief. And that was really hard. And processing it all with my therapist has been a journey. And just trying to break through some patterns of thinking that I developed while in that relationship, of like not enforcing boundaries, or just falling into, like, codependent compliance patterns, and just kind of just still continuing to work on myself. And it's just been hard, um, working with my therapist and being told that I have, like, PTSD from this relationship, because um, and apparently that's part of, like, the shame space that I go into, is, like, invalidating my experience and being like, oh, it wasn't that bad, or people have it way worse, or, like, I deserve this, or whatever it is, just, like, unhealthy stuff. Um, and knowing that that's all, like, from the trauma, like, that because stuff is so volatile, or inconsistent, or confusing, or, like, manipulative, or whatever you want to call it, like, that when that kind of stuff shows up, that is the PTSD showing its face. So it's been something hard for me to accept, and work through. And even just, like, if I want to hang out with, like, a guy friend, like, I can see I can just see that stuff show up, differently than, like, if I'm with a female friend. So I mean, I know it's there. I'm still working on accepting it and working through it. Um, but it's real. So all in all, like, I am really proud of myself for knowing my worth and knowing what I deserve and knowing that I deserve that right now. I don't have to work for it, like, and give all my love in order to receive a piece or breadcrumb of love. It's like, no, like, I deserve to be with an equal partner who works on themselves just as much as I work on myself, and who wants to show up for me and be in an actual partnership, and who is capable of being vulnerable and like owning their stuff. Because again, like, I'm not expecting anyone to be perfect, but it's like, you got to own your stuff and work on it, at least in my eyes. So that's that. And just really getting reacquainted with my sense of self, and like remembering what I bring to the table, and like when that shame pops up, holding myself with that tenderness and compassion so I can let that shame go to rest, because it doesn't help anyone. It certainly doesn't help me, and it's not true. It's still a process. It still is hard for me to, I think, feel safe with men, but I'm getting there. But all in due time, and just trusting people who are trustworthy and letting them show me through their consistent actions that they are worthy of that trust, not just because they say it or something like that. And just really enforcing my boundaries and taking time for myself, pouring into myself, being with great people, doing the things that I love to do, doing the stuff that I feel like I've been either missing out on or whatever, just not making myself small, just really living and participating in my life and allowing myself to receive good things. I'm super grateful for that. And it's just so interesting. Like, now that my energy isn't going to this like black hole of a relationship, it's like how I just feel like I'm receiving so, like, almost like an overwhelming amount of like great things coming my way. And just working through that PTSD of like, just because I'm receiving this thing doesn't mean that like it's gonna be taken away from me, or just because like this person's being nice to me doesn't mean that they have a hidden agenda, or that they're going to use this against me, or whatever it is. So working through that. But to anyone who is listening, who's going through something similar, or is going through something, or is maybe in the middle of it, I'm sending you so much love. I'm sending you so much love, because this, again, was one of the hardest things I've ever had to experience in my life. And I'm just really sorry if you're having to experience it, or are experiencing it, or have. Just know I see you, and I'm here for you. Please reach out if you need to chat or anything. But just know I'm holding you in my heart and sending you all my love, and that you're worth doing what you need to do, that your safety is important, that your heart, like your emotional safety, is important, that what you want, like your dreams, your desires, you deserve to have those, and you deserve to be with an equal partner. And knowing that whatever you want in someone else, like you embodying those traits and living your life in that way, is all the proof that you need to know that that person for you is out there. Because if you can do it, and if you can cherish yourself and prioritize yourself and grow and just advance in life, and do so from a heart-centered place, like that, you embodying those values, or whatever it is that you value, like you are living proof that that can happen, and that you don't have to settle for anything or anyone that isn't matching your energy, and who can't give back to you. You deserve to be with an equal. And not that like my ex is like subordinate, but I think we're just in different places, and that's okay. Like I want nothing but the best for him. Like I really do. And I think he'll make someone very happy one day, and I just want him to be happy too. But that's where I've just had to let go, where like that can't be me. And that's okay. So I'm sure I'll share more about this as I continue to process, but that felt really, really good, just like letting that out. Because like I said, I've just been carrying that, and I knew I wanted to speak on it for some time, but I just hadn't felt safe. I wanted to, one, wait till he was out of my house. But two, once I was able to be in my space by myself, like there's a lot I've been working through in this process. So now I feel like I'm finally at the place to pick this back up and be on this platform again. So with that, thank you just from the bottom of my heart for listening, for your support, for being with me on this journey as I'm with you on your journey. It means the world to me. It really does. And just know again that you are worth what it is that you need, what you want, but you're also the one that needs to advocate for that. No one's going to do that for you. And that's ultimately you taking your power back and acting on that power. And that true self-love is not just like doing the nice, cute stuff for ourselves, but doing the hard stuff sometimes and making those hard choices. Just know you're worth that too. And the pain is temporary, even if it doesn't feel like it, even if it's excruciating. Like, believe me, I've been in like the fetal position sobbing like many times throughout this process, but I knew that those feelings needed to take up space and that I would get through it and that I had support, and that those feelings are evidence of what your experience has been, and that's super valid. And as someone who I feel like I'm not quite on the other side of it all. I mean, I'm getting there. Like I have like a foot on the other side of this. And it feels wonderful. And that's what you deserve, that and more. So we're in this together. Again, reach out if there's anything I can do for you. Subscribe, like, all that jazz. Touch my mic. Subscribe, like, whatever you want. If you want to stay connected and keep hearing more pieces of this journey. But either way, I appreciate you, and I'm super grateful for you. And just thank you again for spending this time with me today and holding this space for me. All my love is going to you. So with that, bye for now.